Hello. A PowerPoint presentation for you if you are one of our Linguistics 3701 students doing approaches in linguistics. This is specifically to cover your assignment 2. And so it focuses on cognitive linguistics. For some people, if they haven't encountered cognitive linguistics before, it can seem a little abstract and honestly a little confusing at first. So I've put together this short introduction for you, and hopefully at the end of it, you will be able to look at it and feel like cognitive linguistics is something much more concrete, easier to get your head around, and hopefully you'll be as excited about it as I am. Now, when I put together this presentation for you, I went through the Yanda article that you need to be summarizing. I understand that it's really difficult when you haven't worked with the subject before to know exactly what you should be looking at, what you should be focusing on, how much you should be saying. So as we go through these slides, you'll see that I've taken quotes from the article, and I've given you quotes, I've given you page numbers that they're from, so that you have a starting point for each section that you need to chat about, that you'll be able to work around and flesh in using this PowerPoint, using the article, using your study guide. And yeah, so let's get going. Cognitive linguistics, very exciting, very dynamic approach to linguistics, a very integrated approach that looks at your whole body, your whole mind, our environment, our culture, everything as a part of language, how language is created, where language comes from, how we use it. It's absolutely stunning, and I hope that you're going to love it. So the first thing to chat about, and this quote actually doesn't come from the Yanda article, it comes from the Evans and Green textbook, is when we speak about cognitive linguistics, about the cognitive linguistic approach, we don't speak about it as a theory. We speak about it as an enterprise, or even possibly a movement. The reason for that is, if you have looked at something, for example, generative grammar, you would think of it as a theory. You would think of it as having one main contributing mind behind it. Now, this isn't the case with cognitive linguistics. We have a number of theories that sometimes mostly complement each other, not always. A number of linguists that have proposed these theories or working on these theories. So it's not one source, it's not one theory, it's not one person. But what it is a number of theories that work together, and people who share the same basic ideas about what language is, how language is produced, how language is used. And you don't have to go into detail on this. This is just so that you understand when we ask you to summarize things about the cognitive linguistic enterprise or to compare it, that we mean just cognitive linguistics in general. You can have a look in your study notes for more information here on the generalization commitment and the cognitive commitment, which are the two core commitments that linguists who consider themselves cognitive linguists and who contribute to the cognitive linguistics enterprise. These are the commitments that they hold themselves to. The most fundamentally different and the most defining thing about cognitive linguistics is that we don't see linguistic cognition as being separate from general cognition or from general human cognition. So what does this mean? It means that before cognitive linguistics, the traditional approach had been and is still for many linguists today, the idea is that language has its own part in the brain. It was a very modular idea. You are all familiar, I'm sure, with the concept of, for example, universal grammar. So the idea was that there was mechanisms in the brain, or parts of the brain, blueprints in our brain, that deal with language. And language is learnt there, it is produced there. It's not something that is produced by other parts of our cognitive, of our cognitive system. In cognitive linguistics, this is not the way we think. We look at it and we say, okay, so human cognition, when we talk about human cognition, we're talking about a lot of things. We basically, you could, mental processes, we're talking about mental processes, things that we use every day on an ongoing level, all the time. So, for example, thinking, remembering, imagination, learning things, paying attention to things, memory, so many things that we use all the time that are part of our cognition, so the mental processes that we use. And what we're saying is, language is not a separate thing. There are not specific processes that only deal with language. There's not a part of our brain that only deals with language. We're saying that these processes, the everyday general processes that we use for all kinds of other things, these are the things we use for language. So a very easy one to visualize and understand is that as humans, we have a fantastic ability to recognize patterns. If I had to take this picture on the slide and I had to cover up parts of it, some of those shapes, you would be able to tell me what those shapes are because you could work it out from the pattern. I'm using a very concrete example here just because it's easier to explain. So we have a capacity for pattern recognition. It's why we can recognize faces, we recognize patterns. And what we're saying is, okay, so in language, this would apply. We would use our ability for pattern recognition in language, in everything from recognizing what order sounds go in, to recognizing patterns in the words themselves, to recognizing that these specific words are used for these specific things, and being able to work out for ourselves what words mean, for example. So yeah, so it's the things we use every day that we learn in language. It is not a separate faculty. It is not a separate set of processes. It is all integrated, and you will see this idea of everything being integrated. It comes up again and again and again in cognitive linguistics. We don't separate things out, which is why that where we would maybe traditionally talk about what we would, let's say, call modules, for example, of language. We would maybe talk about, you might call it parts of language, phonology, or semantics, syntax, grammar, all these different parts of language. Think of them as paint in little containers. Now, we don't see them as being in those little containers. We don't see the different things that make up language. We don't see them as existing separately. We think that is incredibly artificial. We can speak about them as being separate for the purposes of, for example, studying different aspects of language. But in fact, nothing is separate. It is like all these beautiful colors coming together to make this beautiful painting. Everything is intertwined. We don't separate things out. A section that you don't need to go into in massive detail, but you do need to be aware of it, is this. Here, linguistics has a strong desire to be an exact science. So when people hear about cognitive linguistics, sometimes it seems just sort of a you know, warm, fuzzy, touchy-feely, lovey kind of a thing. We in cognitive linguistics don't just look to linguistics, we look to other sciences. We look to psychology, we look to neuroscience, and we draw on a lot of things. So yes, so we work to be an exact science. We seek to understand. We want to understand. We want to understand the processes in our minds. We want to understand the mental processes that are how they are operational in language, how they create language, how they help us create meaning in language. It's just so broad. And of course, people are all so different. And when we're speaking about having this desire to be an exact science, Yanda is reminding us that people are not rule-driven. We're not machines. We can't take any element of language use, language learning, any element of linguistics to do with people and make these hard and fast rules. Cognitive linguistics is not rule-driven. But at the same time, we're acknowledging that there are certain patterns or certain processes that everyone uses, patterns that emerges. For example, we will get to categorization in a little bit. Organizing information in categories. That is basically human. How we do it, what I have in my categories relating to one thing is different to what you have relating to yours, but we're both using that process to organize our knowledge. So don't have to go into much detail here. We just yeah, enough said about that. All right, the other awesome thing that I'm going to keep coming back to is meaning and the status of meaning and the importance of this in cognitive linguistics and why it is important to so many things that we discuss. Now, in our view, language is a living thing that we use. It is not possible to just have knowledge of a language like we could have all these books with lots of rules, lots of words, and this is our knowledge of the language. We can't do that. Language exists because it's used. To know a language is to use a language. And the reason we use language is to communicate and to create meaning. We create meaning with language. So this process of this process of creating meaning is at the heart of language. How do we create this meaning? If I'm speaking about meaning, how do I create meaning? Do I take words, put them in a sentence, make sure they are grammatically correct, and then I have meaning and the meaning is conveyed to you? We don't believe that because, as we've been discussing, everything is integrated. There are a few reasons that we don't believe meaning is just something that you transfer. One of the reasons is because we don't believe that words have very narrow dictionary definitions. If I say the word love to you, you don't just think of the few lines that you're going to find in a dictionary. There are tens of thousands of things that you associate with the word love, and all these associations, that Valentine's card you got, that balloon-shaped heart, time you fell in love, this movie you saw, I don't know, everything that touches on this word for you creates or adds to the meaning of that word for you. So it is not a dictionary meaning, it is not narrow. You have an encyclopedic knowledge of this word. And the word itself actually just activates that knowledge. It gives you access to this incredible network of knowledge and associations that come with that word. So that being so, if I tell you, I see a tree, for me, information and the meaning associated with tree is so massive, so vastly different from yours. So I can't just take meaning somehow. I can't take these words, put them in an order, parcel them together, and parcel up meaning with these words, give them to you, and you unpack them and you have the meaning. We don't believe that it works that way. We believe that meaning is constructed. So as I'm speaking, as you are listening, I am constructing meaning, you are constructing meaning. It is something, it is something dynamic that we create, that we're part of the creation of. There are things that we use in the creation of this meaning, which we will get to in a little while. Metaphor, metonymy, blending. There are operations we use in the creation of meaning. But right now, what you need to understand is that meaning is its core, and we don't believe that it's something that is just captured in words. We also believe that grammar carries meaning. It contributes to the meaning. It's not just a framework that we slot the words into. Oh, super exciting. The one thing that I think I love most about cognitive linguistics is this idea of embodied cognition. So remember, we're speaking about cognition. We're speaking about our mental processes. Now, what we're saying is there is no separation between mind and body. There, especially when we're talking about language, it's not like there are things happening in our minds, and they only happen in our minds, and language only happens in our minds. And then there are our bodies, which are kind of separate. We don't believe this at all. Because as humans, we are in this physical body, we're interacting with the world, we're experiencing things. I'm experiencing hot, cold, up, down, a variety of things. And I'm using my physical world, I'm using my experiences in my body, in my physical world, to create conceptual structures, to create frameworks, to create things in my mental world that I can use when I use language. And in this way, my physical world and the interaction with my physical world through my body, it provides me with the basis, the raw material, the framework that I use when I use language. And I use it in my construction of meaning. So again, this meaning coming in and this complete integration coming in. Important to remember, though, is that while there are some things that we will all be able to experience, we all have an experience of up and down. Probably almost everyone has an experience of hot or cold. We all experience gravity, right? Being embodied beings in a human body means we are bound to gravity. So while there are so many things about us that we will experience in similar ways, or there are things we share, right? There are things that we share. But at the same time, there are things that are unique to us, because each one of us has a unique perception. We have a unique way of interpreting the world. I interpret the world different to you do, to the way you do. And because of this differences, again, let's talk about meaning again. This is another reason that I can't just take meaning. I can't encode meaning in a sentence, pass it over to you and have you decode it. There is no one-on-one correlation between what we have in our mental spaces and reality. Well, the physical world. There is no one-on-one correlation between what I experience, what I have in my mind, and what you have in your mind. So again, meaning is constructed and but based on embodied experience. Now, the whole we take from the physical world and use it in our mental world might have sounded a little abstract, so hopefully this is where it becomes a bit more concrete for you. when you are a baby, you're very young, you already start to develop this understanding of your experiences in the physical world and creating this mental framework for it. And one of the first things that you start to understand is containers. That you can have a container, you can have a box, you can put things into it, you can take things out of it. You can fill it, you can empty it. When things are inside, they don't magically leak out through the walls. They stay inside where you put them. So very physical, very concrete, right? If we look at this picture, these are some fishes in a bowl. Water is in this container, fishes are in this container. If I keep filling this container, it's going to overflow. If I fill it too much and the water can't go anywhere, it might even burst. It's very physical. I take this physical experience with the world, I use it conceptually. I use it conceptually I use it conceptually when I am when I'm using language. So if we look at some of the expressions here, I am in love, I'm bursting with excitement, I feel empty inside, my heart is overflowing, I'm filled with joy. All of these things, let's look again at meaning, right? If meaning was just a case of just words, these words struggle with the meaning here, right? But this has meaning. This has meaning because we understand containers. We have this container schema that we have created and that we use to understand concepts to create concepts. So I hope that in this, that you can see how we're starting to see how our physical world is not separate from our mental world and definitely not separate. Our physical experience are definitely not separate from our use of language. We use it and we draw on it. Right, another stunning and very, very important thing, and there is quite a bit of this in the article, is on categorization and what we speak about as prototype theory. Right, if we look at these pictures, and I had to say to you, pick the one that's a chair. Most of you are probably going to pick the one top left that is a wooden chair with 4 legs. Now, if we look at categorization in the traditional approach to categorization, we're looking at something belongs in a category because it meets a set of criteria. For example, a chair is something with 4 legs, a seat, an upright back. And if something is going to fit into the category of chair, it needs to be pretty close to that. Fairly rigid. Things in the traditional sense don't belong in more than one category. You're a chair, that's where you are. But when you're looking at this slide, you're probably already thinking to yourself, wow, but you know that swing could be a chair. In fact, a beanbag could be a chair. Because as humans, we are not rule-driven in that way. Our thought processes are a lot broader. They're a lot more relaxed and encompassing. So in cognitive linguistics, we do not have these set, very, very firm categories. What we look at instead is we would say, all right, what is a prototype chair? The prototype, what is a chair that has sort of the most chairness a chair can have? What do most people think of when we think of chair? What is the most representative? That image of the chair. That is, let's call it the prototype of a chair, okay? So right, 4 legs and an upright back. But does that mean that everything that to belong in the category of chair, everything needs to look like this? No, it doesn't. It doesn't need to have the same features, it just has to have a relationship. Enough of a relationship for us to link it to that chair. There is a lot more to say about prototype theory and categories, and that is there's in your notes, so I'm not going to expand on that for now. But again, right, again, you can look at this again and again and see how we really look at how humans think. We look at how language is used in the real world. How do people actually see things? We can't put rules in place and say, these are the hard and fast rules for how this works or how this works, because that's not how our minds work. Categorization, how we organize our knowledge, how we store our knowledge so that we can access it. Very, very important. Please have a close look at that. Then conceptual metaphor theory. I am going to do a separate set of slides and a separate meeting on this, because conceptual metaphor theory is super, super important, because we believe that thought is metaphorical in nature. So we think in metaphors. And when we're speaking again about meaning and the creation of meaning, metaphors are one of the ways in which we create meaning in language. A lovely formal definition is it's a mapping from a source domain to a target domain, or it's an understanding of something from one domain in terms of another domain. Domains are sort of areas of knowledge. So if I'm saying to you, the metaphor is love of warmth, love is warmth, I'm understanding love. I'm understanding the feeling of love. I'm understanding it in terms of something else. I'm understanding that abstract feeling of love, which is maybe difficult to explain. I'm understanding it and I'm explaining it in terms of something physical. I'm explaining it in terms of warmth, of feeling warm, of the sensation of warmth. So the domain of love and the domain of warmth. Now, if we think about this, when we love someone or we are with someone who we have a desire for, or we are physically with them, we feel warm, right? We even say, oh, I feel warm and fuzzy. Physically, we actually feel warmth. We say things like, oh, I have the hots for you. I have the hots for you. Our relationship has cooled down. You've been so cold towards me. Right, love is warmth, and then the opposite as well. So you're looking at just two domains, and you are taking correspondences from one domain to the other domain. Lots of lovely things to say about conceptual metaphor theory, so please have a look at the other slides that I'm going to be doing for that. But very, very important one. This is not metaphor as you understood it in school. It is not metaphor as you use it in books or poetry. It is conceptual. It is part of your conceptual system. It is part of how you think, and it's part of your thought process. It's part of your conceptual system. It is not there as a literary tool to enhance the way you write, the kind of thing that you've done in school. It is not like that, right? It's much deeper. It is it's a fundamental part of our thought system. Another thing that we use to create meaning, and our use of meaning, is metonymy. Metonymy is really when we take a word or a term and we use it to replace another word or a term. Both the original thing that was there and the thing we replace it with, they mean the same. It's kind of like you've just swapped out a word or a term. Common South African example is using the word grandpa, which is a headache powder, to refer to any kind of headache pill or powder. So if I ask you, do you have grandpa? You might actually give me a Panado. It's fine. You understand. I don't necessarily mean the actual grandpa headache tablet. I'm asking for a grandpa. It means any headache pill or tablet. Someone gave me a stunning example yesterday, which is, let's say I want to go and buy a license disc for my car, and I tell you about it, and you say, oh, don't go to the shops. The robots are selling license discs. The robots are selling. You don't really mean the robot. The word robot here refers to the vendor at the robot. You're replacing the word vendor with robot. Lovely, lovely examples of metonymy in your notes, so have some fun with that. Third thing in these operations that work in the creation of language, and my absolute favorite, so I wish there was so much more of it here, is conceptual blending theory. Basically, you are taking, remember we spoke about domains as roughly speaking areas of knowledge. So instead of taking two domains and looking at the correspondences between them, like we did for metaphor, we take things from these two domains and we blend them, we mix them together, and we come up with a third thing, which is entirely different and unique and individual and not part of those original two things anymore. This is so stunning. It also works on a conceptual level. The example that you have in your book are very tangible examples. It's blending to do with words. Blending does not only have to do with words. It is so much broader, but for your purposes and our purposes here, because it's really something we can see and use, we've applied it to words. So for example, you have the word emotion, which is from the domain of human experience. And then we have icon, which would come from, what would we say, communication, the domain of communication. We put them together, and what do we have? Emoticon. Emoticon, which functions in the domain of digital communication. So emotion and icon becomes emoticon. Absolutely stunning, beautiful part of cognitive linguistics. I think the most beautiful. We use it for everything, for imagination, creativity, everything. I hope you'll read. I hope you'll read a lot more. I hope you'll read up on it a lot more once you've done with your assignment. Right. Then on to a little bit of grammar, which you will also see and will expect by now that in cognitive linguistics is not a separate thing. We don't feel that grammar is there as, let's say, a blueprint or a pattern where we don't use it. We don't use grammar to then organize words or to ensure the correct syntax or any of those things, because traditionally you're thinking maybe more of grammar as an element on its own, separate from lexical items, separate from words. We don't see it that way, right? Because remember, for us, everything is integrated and everything is working together in the creation of meaning. The reason I have a heart here is not because we all love grammar, although maybe we do all love grammar. The heart is because if I ask you what this heart symbolizes, you're going to tell me probably it symbolizes love. So if I say to you, it symbolizes, why? Why does it symbolize love? Not because in some objective universe there are these unwritten cosmic rules that say a heart means love. No, it is because we agree that that's what it means. Within a speech community or a culture or a group, we have all come to agree on the fact that a heart means love. We all see it in the same way. And why? Why? Because we use it that way. We put it on Valentine's Day cards. We draw it on letters. We use it because we've used it that way. It becomes convention for it to be like that. We all agree that it's like that. And it's that simple because that is the way that language works. Because language is usage-based, because it's something that we all share. There are things that come to mean certain things because they're used that way, and we agree that they're used that way without knowing that we agree, right? Without knowing. So construction grammar, we look at, okay, a pairing of form and meaning, right? Form and meaning. So to use my little heart example, if the form was the heart, the meaning that we associate with it is love. It's a pairing. If another pairing is if I have the word dog, D-O-G, my form, dog. The meaning of dog is animal, furry animal, 4 legs. When I give you the form, dog, you associate it with that meaning. But again, this is a conventionalized meaning. There's no objective universe where this word, D-O-G, means dog, because if there was, it would mean there would be the word dog in every language to refer to a dog. But obviously that's not the case. Remember that this form meaning pair, I'm using words because it's short and concrete, but it doesn't just apply to words. It is in everything. If you go through every level in language, through morphemes, words, phrases, if you look at things very important like idioms, things like, oh, he kicked the bucket, that does not have meaning in its own. If you had no idea what that was and you had never heard that idiom before and you had just seen it, it wouldn't mean someone had died, which it does. Kicks the bucket means someone has died. But because of this form, meaning, pairing in construction grammar, here the form, kick the bucket, means someone has died. It has become conventionalized. This is how we use it. That form, that chunk of words, they mean this specific thing. All right, and that is construction grammar, which can sound a little complicated when you read it, but at the basis, that's it. And then there are different different forms of it and different things that different people have done. You will read about that. At the heart of it, this is what it is. Then last, but that you're going to look at in your assignment, is the quantitative term. And traditionally, we might have all thought of linguistics as more qualitative, because we don't think, we're thinking, right, words, so definitely qualitative, touchy-feely, lovey stuff. But it can definitely be studied using quantitative methods. And this is just, as with this is just so that you are aware that it is a possibility that these methods are there, and it can be studied in this way. So again, for this, you don't need to go into maximum amount of detail, just, but you do need to know, and you need to just give a little bit of information on that. And the last thing, please, when you are writing, we have asked for you to summarize the article in your own words, and in your own words means in your own words. If you are, you can't just paraphrase. Read it over, make it your own. If you're going to quote, fantastic, but do what I did on these slides, please. You have to reference properly. You have to give the page number if you have given an actual quote. If you haven't given an actual quote, then it's fine just to reference the and then the year. Please put your referencing in. Very important, good habit to get into doing now already. And fantastic. That was your introduction to cognitive linguistics for your section A of your first assignment. I hope it made things maybe a little clearer. Hopefully it made it a little more concrete, and I hope it made it a lot more exciting, because it is a phenomenal approach to linguistics. And yeah, so much more to say about it. I hope you enjoyed it. Please check the slide on metaphors that are coming, and good luck with your assignment. Get hold of me, please, if you need anything at all.